Former White House political director for President George W. Bush, Matt Schlapp. He's now chairman of the American Conservative Union. Also, Daily Beast senior politics editor Jackie Kucinich and Huffington Post senior political reporter Scott Conroy. Thank you all for joining us. Matt, let me start with you here because Benji talked about how the crowd there very excited, the conservatives regarding Donald Trump. The crowd at the debate, not so much. Did Donald Trump disappoint you, or do you believe he stayed on track?
Look, the American Conservative Union had a watch party, and they loved Donald Trump, and they really cheered aggressively for him. I was in the hall at the debate, and I think his first answer on saying he wouldn't necessarily support the Republican nominee wasn't popular with the crowd, but he got back on his feet and had several answers that did connect. I still think the winner of the day of both debates of the whole day, is Carly Fiorina. It's the story coming out of yesterday.
Now, is it the story for pundits and insiders like yourself, or is it the story that you think that people are waking up, everywhere around this country talking about? Because I feel like there's a push with a lot of the pundits who keep bringing up Carly Fiorina, and rightfully so, but I don't know if that's the same conversation someone's having today at the water cooler.
Let me give you an example. So we had this debate watch party in Cleveland, just 2 blocks from the arena, for people who couldn't get tickets. Carly Fiorina showed up at that event, and the room went crazy. The informal polling around the room was that everyone felt like she really was the superior candidate of the day. So I think this is a real grassroots movement, and I think the pundits see that. Okay,
Jackie, let's talk about Trump's complaint today that he received tougher questions than the other candidates on stage, combined with this new enthusiasm from some conservatives regarding Carly Fiorina and the questions Fox chose to direct at Donald Trump. Is there an effort to get rid of the guy that it seems none of them really wanted around?
I think all of these candidates had some pretty tough questions, and that's why you saw some of them not do as well as the others. If I could just add something to what Matt just said, you saw on Google searches for Carly Fiorina went crazy last night. They even surpassed Trump at one point. So it is real out there. That's not something that that's just in Washington. That's something that's a lot of different places. So I mean, so there is that. But as you're talking about the questions, I think Trump has a thin skin. We saw that again. We saw how he's reacted to Megyn Kelly. Some of the nasty things he said about women, some of the nasty things he's saying about Megyn Kelly. He can dish it out, but last night he couldn't take it.
Well, that's not the question, though. I mean, listen, the questions were rightfully strong regarding Donald Trump and the push there. But, Scott, I think the question for many people, did the other candidates get that same challenge that the viewers at home deserve to see? That's the question. Scott.
Well, I think it's hard when there's 10 candidates, in fairness to the moderators, and clearly, a lot of those questions, especially the first one, was directed at Trump. So, I think, to your point, I think that there was definitely a concerted effort, it seemed to me at least, to take him down a peg. And it seems, a lot of pundits are saying that it worked, quote unquote. But look, we've written Donald Trump's obituary several times before in this race, so who knows how this is actually going to end up playing out.
Absolutely.
In the end.
And back to Jackie and what you were saying about Carly Fiorina, I do want to play this great moment during the early debate where she did, to your point, take on Donald Trump and make a name for herself in many ways on that first debate stage. Let's play it.
I didn't get a phone call from Bill Clinton before I jumped in the race. Did any of you get a phone call from Bill Clinton? I didn't. Maybe it's because I hadn't given money to the foundation or donated to his wife's Senate campaign. I would also just say this, since he has changed his mind on amnesty, on health care, and on abortion, I would just ask, what are the principles by which he will govern?
And Jackie, when we had that moment, I thought to myself watching, what a shame that she wasn't there on the main stage, going back to how Fox really did have to determine who would make the main stage since they've got so many candidates.
Well, I'm usually hesitant to make predictions, but I think that Carly Fiorina might see a bump in the polls here, and that she'll be in the next debate, and we might see that face-off. But you wonder if it's also going to spill into the press. Donald Trump hasn't been shy about responding to something someone has said about him. another venue. So I wonder if you're going to see those two face off. But I would not be at all surprised if we see Carly Fiorina facing off against Donald Trump on the main stage in a month.
And Matt, let's talk about Jeb Bush. In the opening of the show, we said, you know, who helped themselves, who hurt themselves, and then really who just disappeared in Donald Trump's wake and Carly Fiorina's wake. And I think that's the question some have about Jeb Bush. How would you grade his performance yesterday?
You know, I think he almost started off a little tentative. But I think he got his footing as the debate went on. He had some really good answers on education, which for this crowd he really has to hit this. What's the federal role of education head on? And he did a great job when on the answer on the economy. But I do think he was tentative, and I think it almost seems like he's hovering in a great spot where if Trump implodes, he can step up. But I think a lot of his supporters really want to see Jeb jump into these issues like Planned Parenthood and stuff a little more aggressively. So it's going to be interesting to see if he takes that advice.
And let me play what Jeb had to say when he was asked a question again about his family. Let's play that.
I'm going to run hard, run with heart, and run to win. I'm going to have to earn this. Maybe the bar is even higher for me. That's fine. I've got a record in Florida. I'm proud of my dad, and I'm certainly proud of my brother. I'm my own man. I govern as a conservative, and I govern effectively.
You know, Matt talked about him being tentative or hesitant. Scott, how do you explain that or reconcile? Here's a career politician from a family with a huge political legacy, and he would be on a debate stage tentative or timid with someone like a Donald Trump, who's never as brash and bold and all of these crazy things he might or might not be. He's never been on a national debate stage running for president.
Well, I think Jeb is being very cautious not to act as if he thinks this is going to be a coronation for him. So I think in some ways he's actually trying to bring himself down a peg. It's interesting. I actually think that Kasich, you know, you can mark me down as someone who thought that he really did shine last night, and I think if you look at a state like New Hampshire, you know, where Kasich has shown some movement in the polls even before the debate, you know, he could really emerge as the most viable alternative to Jeb, I think. And you know, if you are a sort of a mainstream, right down the middle Republican voter, the kinds of voters that really kind of predominate in New Hampshire as well as independents, and you're interested in a candidate who can be president on day one, who's not going to be too extreme, but you're worried about what Jeb was alluding to there when you're talking about the Bush name, you know, Kasich could kind of be that guy that steps into that fold. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Scott, I think a lot of people have that same reaction to Scott Kasich, particularly how he handled that question about same-sex marriage.
The best answer of the night.
It was the best answer of the night. He owned that answer. He did not back away. It came off as authentic, but still very true to who he is. And he worded it just brilliantly, I thought. But I do want to play just quickly Marco Rubio, because he received a number of high marks from people regarding his performance last night. Let's play it.
If I'm our nominee, how is Hillary Clinton going to lecture me about living paycheck to paycheck? I was raised paycheck to paycheck. How is she going to lecture me? How is she going to lecture me about student loans? I owed over $100,000 just 4 years ago. If I'm our nominee, we will be the party of the future.
Jackie, again, people believe Rubio owning his lane there.
Yeah, I thought that was another one of the great answers of the night, because it really does draw a contrast that some of these other Republican candidates can't. When you talk about wealth, that's something that the last Republican nominee was fighting, trying to explain. So to have someone like Marco Rubio, who has this very relatable story, particularly to young people, particularly about student loans, I think that could really pay dividends for him going forward.
Well, it's interesting. A lot of people have said it's necessarily the debate that mattered. It's the clips that are being played today that will resonate with people, and it's quite interesting to see which ones have been making the rounds. Thank you all so much. We greatly appreciate you joining us. See you September. That's debate.